Thanks everybody for being here, truly. And this is Rabbi Dov Fischer of Young Israel of Orange County. If you so would be inclined, please subscribe to our channel. Please forward the link to anyone you think would be interested, and please give us a like. They add up, as do the subscribers. We're around 750 now, and when we hit 1,000 with God's help, we'll have certain advantages. YouTube will suggest it for more people and things like that when we post our 3 programs weekly. Our Tuesday night class in Tanakh, the Bible, and our Thursday class in Jewish law, as presently as on the theme of Jewish ethics and values at wartime. So we do ask people to subscribe to the channel. It's free. You just click the subscribe thing, and here we go. And I've worked like the Dickens to keep it back to the time we normally aim for. Let's see, here we go.
And the bodies of 4 other hostages as offered by the mediators. Now, this is what they said, so we haven't seen anything yet, but we know there have been ongoing talks with Steve Witkoff over in Doha, where the Israelis, with Witkoff, as well as Hamas, was represented. Well, we also know that Adam Bowler met one-on-one with Hamas, much to the chagrin of many people in Israel last week.
Well, Ainsley, this is a bit of a shift, too, because we know that we started doing direct negotiations with Hamas. That wasn't happening before. And now, if this is true, this is big. I think this is the last American hostage?
American that's alive that is still in captivity by Hamas in Gaza. And his father said, based on reports, he feels like his son is doing okay considering the circumstances, but he says it is very tough. The conditions are very tough, he believes. He's been there for 500 days, give or take, and he looks like he's coming home. We'll believe it when we see it, but they're saying they're going to release him along with the bodies of 4 other hostages. So, look how cute he is. He's from New Jersey, right here.
Right, and his parents have been on before. And let's just add a couple of things. The Israelis have cut off aid to put up the pressure. And in the past, Joe Biden would say, you can't do that to be outraged. But they know that time is not on anybody's side. It's not on anybody's side. So they're just calling up to bring all this thing to a head. And one by one, these hostages are getting out because they were in a stalemate for months leading up to President Trump's takeover.
Yep. It's a tough situation that the Israelis are in right now because they want to do these hostage rescue operations, but Hamas has totally changed the game. They have surrounded the last hostages with explosives. It's almost like a suicide mission right now. So you can't go in like they were typically were doing, trying to rescue them one by one. But then you rain hell on them as well. And then the potential of those hostages dying there.
Yeah. He's 21 years old, and some of the other hostages who have been released said that he was very responsible for taking care of other hostages while they were being holed up in these tunnels. He's from Tenafly, New Jersey, which is right, I believe that's right over the George Washington Bridge, isn't it?
Very close.
Yeah, very close. And he has a younger brother. He lives with his mom, his dad, and his younger brother, and hopefully he'll be coming.
In the West Bank, the IDF is deploying snipers to ambush Palestinians throwing objects at cars.
Remember, there are 3 fronts. There are actually 7 fronts, but the 3 hottest fronts on the south is Gaza. On the north is Hezbollah, that's Lebanon. And also a little bit to the northeast of Lebanon, there's Syria. Lebanon is Hezbollah. Syria is Hezbollah. Syria now is this guy from ISIS who took down Assad. Down in Gaza is Hamas. They're all the same. And to the right, to the east, is Judea, Samaria, that's Israel. It was the land that Israel liberated in 1967 that the Arabs and anti-Semites called the West Bank. And in that so-called West Bank, there's Al-Fatah, which is Mahmoud Abbas and Yasser Arafat's group. And there's also something called Palestine Islamic Jihad. Now, Hamas has had the guts kicked out of it, but they're still there. We know that. And Hezbollah has 88% of its leadership, membership, and weapons wiped out, but they're still there, and they're both cancers. And they, as with all cancers, it's a perfect analogy, it's a perfect metaphor. Like all cancers, unless they're completely cut out and extirpated, there's always the concern that they may come back. And they always do. On the east, in Judea and Samaria, that's where the front has been coolest, not as hot, because Israel never gave them the kind of autonomy that Ehud Barak gave in the north to Hezbollah and that Sharon gave in the south to Hamas when he pulled out Israel from Gaza in 2005. But now that now that all heck is broken loose and hit the fan, it's as good a time as any among Israeli strategists to go and start going after the terrorists in Judea and Samaria with all they got. Until now, it's been something like Obama won't let you do it, Biden won't let you do it. Even George W. Bush, the best until then, had his limits, because he was going around with a Rose Garden strategy that was going to contemplate a so-called two-state solution. That's all dead now. It always was dead, but now it's dead and buried. So Israel's now stepped up in what they call Judea and Samaria, what we call the West. It's outrageous that an Israel news program titles its report West Bank, that they even use that term. But that's what Israel's got. They use the term West Bank in their own report from Israel. That's what the I stands for. Idiots. We continue.
Utilizing intelligence to predict where attacks will take place, marksmen conceal themselves, lying in wait. How many Palestinians do you estimate that you've shot over this time period?
In the last year, since October the 7th, I estimate more than 100. It really depends on the type of attack that the Palestinian has come to do. If he's come to throw a stone, I don't always kill. I injure him in the knee with accurate fire in order to neutralize him and to create a deterrence not to approach the area again. And if he comes with something more dangerous, like a Molotov cocktail, an explosive device, or a weapon, then I make a precise shot to eliminate him.
Other means of preventing attacks against cars traveling through the West Bank have been tried and proved ineffective, the commander says.
What we see here is 3 guys preparing to throw stones at Route 60, where cars are traveling at 70 miles per hour. A stone hitting you at this speed destroys lives. We see the guys collect stones through the thermal scope, actually bending down to pick them up. 2 of them take a forward position, overlooking the cars, so they can throw at the windshield. The guy on the left is preparing to throw. We are ready. As soon as he throws, we fire accurately. The guy on the left falls. The other on the right runs 20 to 30 meters and falls behind a bush. We are already pursuing them at this stage.
The young soldiers at his command say they understand the responsibility resting on their trigger fingers.
It's a big feeling because you understand the importance of what you're doing. So if, say, there's a terrorist that comes to throw Molotovs on speeding cars on the highway, you know, you can easily get into an accident and kill people.
But how easily can a tall teenager be misidentified as an adult when viewed through a thermal sight?
If we look back at the area's history and intelligence patterns, most of the attackers are over the age of 18. It's important to say that. There have been cases where we identified a 14 to 15-year-old minor who is very short and skinny, and we don't shoot.
According to Jewish law, if a 14-year-old minor who is very short and skinny knowingly throws rocks at a car going 70 miles an hour or 7 miles an hour, it is halachically appropriate to shoot that kid to kill. The idea that, first of all, in Judaism, 14 is not a minor, 13 is a minor. Second of all, that applies to Jewish children and any non-Jew or otherwise who's trying to kill Jews throwing rocks. It is absolutely unethical Jewishly and immoral not to shoot the 14-year-old to kill, just to clear things up. But they have their virtue signaling they're very big on in the army in Israel. I'm going to leave this in a moment for time.
Detain him on the spot. But usually we manage to identify. Our soldiers are very professional.
When such
Again, if you detain him, you're holding the 14-year-old, he'll be the first one they let go at the next hostage taking.
tactics are employed, attacks against cars in an area reduce, the sniper company commander says, leaving his troops ready to deploy to the next ambush.
We move on for time reasons. You get the idea. And now I believe we come to our favorite alma mater. A lot of news this.
It's terrifying. I mean, what you're seeing on TV is a good taste of it, but to see someone in front of you that's covered head to toe, you can see only their eyes. You have no idea what they're going to do next. We can't negotiate with these people. We cannot take a middle approach. There must be a hardline approach. If you violate the rules laid out in the Student Code of Conduct, you shall face the consequences.
Anti-Semitic chaos at Columbia University prompting the White House to take action. ICE agents arresting protest leader Mahmoud Khalil. His attorney says the administration is moving to cancel his green card. Maya Solkin is a Columbia graduate. She is a reporter and assistant editor for the Free Press, and so good to see you in person. His attorney says ICE's arrest and detention of Mahmoud follows the U.S. government's open repression of student activism and political speech, specifically targeting students at Columbia for criticism of Israel's assault on Gaza. Now, that's his attorney. How do you see it?
Thank you so much for having me. Listen, this is someone who has been the engine behind so much of the violence that we have seen on campus since October 7th. And so no one is telling Khalil and students like him that they cannot peacefully protest or even say things that we disagree with. But what is happening is violence, it is harassment, it is trespassing, it is causing thousands of dollars in property damage and sending public safety officers to the hospital. So we are not talking about free speech anymore. We are talking about crimes.
You graduated from Columbia, so you're very familiar with this. There is the head of the Columbia Jewish Alumni Association said every American citizen should be concerned when students are encouraging terrorist activities on U.S. soil. I agree. Was he encouraging terrorist activity? Or was he just protesting Israel?
I mean, listen, in Milbank Hall just a few days ago and in Milstein Library, 3 days ago, he was handing out flyers from the Hamas media outlet, which is not an exaggeration, literally the Hamas logo on these flyers. Wow. I mean, these are people that call October 7th a glorious day. They are carrying Hamas flags. If that is not espousing terrorist activity, I really do not know what is.
I wanted to ask you about this because over the weekend, I think it was Friday, the Trump administration canceled $400 million in federal funds.
What? You're going to be under arrest. So turn around.
Okay,
Stop resisting.
Okay, he's not resisting. He's giving me his phone, okay? He's not, I understand, he's not resisting.
Put your arm around. There's no use for this. Don't worry about it. You're going to have to come with us. Don't worry. I'm coming with you. Don't worry. No one's resisting. No one's getting worked up.
You guys really don't need to be doing all of that.
It's fine.
حبيبي كيف بدي اتصل فيك؟
Take Amy. Call Amy.
Okay. Hi, Amy. Yeah, they just like handcuffed him and took him. I don't know what.
Amy is his lawyer, Amy Greer. So he's walking, minding his own business. ICE, 3 or 4 from ICE surprise him, come, they bust him, they handcuff him. And his first words to his wife, call Amy.
To do.
To understand the ramifications, seriously, think in your own mind. Okay, you're law-abiding. ICE is not going to come and get you if you are here legally, such as having been born here or any of a number of other ways. But are you prepared, the first words out of your mouth to your spouse or your best friend who's with you. Call John, or call Dave, call my lawyer right away. What kind of person at age 20 or 23, first words out of his mouth, call Amy, not even call Ms. Greer or call our lawyer, call Amy. And the wife knows right away, Amy, that's the lawyer. You see what they're made of.
Okay. And what should I do? I don't know.
You should have left Jews alone. Where but on Rabbi Fischer's Sunday morning program do you get to watch the actual arrest?
Nor. Let me ask. Can we get a name, please? Of can we get your name? I understand the lawyer is asking for your name.
Go back, please. Go over there. No, we don't give our name.
The lawyer's asking for your name. He's saying they don't give their names.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They'll be taken to immigration custody at 26 Federal Plaza.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
They'll be taken to immigration custody at 26 Federal Plaza.
She said they're taking him to 26 Federal Plaza. Can you please specify what agency is taking him, please? Excuse me. They're not talking to me. I don't know. I don't know. Excuse me. The lawyer would like to speak to somebody. Oh my God, they're literally running away from me.
How many more New Yorkers will you detain? How many more New Yorkers without charge? Do you believe in the First Amendment? Do you believe in the First Amendment, Tom Homan?
The First Amendment, of course, is famous for protecting freedom of speech. It also protects freedom of assembly, and most Americans don't even realize that the first thing it protects is freedom of religion. They have no idea that that's also First Amendment. Now, under the First Amendment, the courts have handed down through the Supreme Court several different cases that the First Amendment may be restricted in part for time, place, or manner purposes. In the famous example that everybody knows, you're not allowed to shout fire in a crowded theater. It could set off a massive rush, everyone's afraid, and people could actually get killed during the rush. So you're allowed to restrict the First Amendment. Fire in a crowded theater, that's a matter of place. You're allowed to restrict based on time, place, or manner. You can yell fire somewhere else. Woody Allen has pointed out you can yell movie in a fire station, but you're not allowed to yell fire in a crowded theater. You're also typically not allowed to use a bullhorn 3 in the morning. That's time. Time, place, and manner. Let's say you're trying to gain attention for Soviet Jewry. You go to a hockey game in Boston where the Soviet national hockey team is playing an American team, ice hockey. And to call attention to the cause of Soviet Jewry, you throw marbles on the ice rink. You could be arrested for that, but it's symbolic speech, manner. There can be a restriction, no marbles on ice hockey fields. So you can restrict time, place, manner. Does not give you the right to sit in traffic and get arrested and block traffic. You'll be arrested because of the place. You're not sitting in your house, but at 67th and Lexington, where we sat for Soviet Jewry, and the manner. We weren't demonstrating, but we were holding up traffic. We did it differently from the way they do it these days, in many different ways we don't want to take time out on now. But we always understood a part of fighting for Soviet Jewry, if you sit in the street based on time, place, and manner restrictions, we never screamed First Amendment. We just got arrested. And that was what we had to do then to get attention in an era when there was no internet news media like CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. There was no online internet news outlets. So in order to get into the vitally tight space of the New York Times, New York Post, or the Washington Post, you had to get arrested. We accepted that. We didn't cry later. There was time, place, and manner. We continue. This also is another thing. There's a very interesting thing we'll be learning as the courts come to wrestle with this. The First Amendment, don't assume offhand that it protects non-Americans who are in America the way it protects you and me. If you are an American, you have certain responsibilities to vote, to serve on a jury, and you have certain benefits. You're protected in certain ways. Non-Americans are not. If you don't like our laws and are not prepared to live by our laws, stay out of our country. Go somewhere friendlier like Syria, Iran, and have a good time invoking the First Amendment in Gaza when you argue as a woman that you should be able to go with your head uncovered. You want to come into this country, America, you have to honor its rules. That's very reasonable. Only a left-wing media and the left-wing supporters of that media even would contemplate that that's a discussion. But anyway, they've all been taught by their lawyers, and at Columbia, if you get any trouble, start yelling First Amendment, and always be sure to have your lawyer's name, in your pocket and with you. We continue.
But when you're here on an immigration, whether it's a visa or a green card, you're playing by a different set of rules. You have no right to be here unless you comply with the rules, unlike U.S. citizens. And so it's a very different situation. And I think the government does have a key role there. It does have an interest and a right to keep people out who give support for terrorism. There's no reason why we as a country need to let in people who come here for the very purpose of not only advocating the overthrow of the U.S. government, not only advocating the destruction of our society, but engaging in organizing violent conduct, harassing conduct. This is not a free speech issue.
Not a free speech issue. First, you saw a New York State far-left socialist communist lawmaker attack border czar Tom Homan over the arrest and deportation of pro-Hamas activist Mahmoud Khalil. He's here on a green card. That was a top Cornell law professor saying he doesn't have free speech rights. And joining us now is at Cornell University Professor William Jacobson. Sir, thank you so much. A pleasure to see you. Thank you for joining us. Can you explain and break down this issue, why it's not a First Amendment rights issue?
Right, because when you come here on a visa and if you eventually obtain a green card, you're not a citizen. You don't have the full rights that we have as citizens. And you come here on the condition that you comply with the immigration laws. And the immigration laws do allow to deport people even if they have not committed a crime. If he made some of the statements he made as a U.S. citizen, you either prosecute him or you leave him alone. But when you come here on a visa and then a green card, there are provisions in the immigration laws that allow for your removal. So it's not that you have no free speech rights, but you have rights that are subject to the immigration laws that do not apply to U.S. citizens.
Got it. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Professor, said this is about people that don't have a right to be in the U.S. to begin with, that no one has a right to a visa, no one has a right to a green card. The U.S. has a right to deny that for virtually any reason, notably a supporter of Hamas, a murderous, barbaric group that kidnaps children, rapes teenage girls, kidnaps and takes hostages, including Americans, and let other hostages die in captivity.
You see, when Trump was elected, not only did we get rid of Biden and Kamala Harris, but Tony Blinken no longer is the Secretary of State. We don't have to deal with him anymore. Marco Rubio is the new Secretary of State. And as we said at the beginning of Trump's term, as he started filling his cabinet positions, this is like an all-star team of people who are pro-Israel. And the only problem that we've had is we have to fight left-wing communist Jews and Jewish liberals who actually are trying now to prevent Mike Huckabee from taking up his duties as American ambassador to Israel. But Rubio's gotten through, and most of that incredibly pro-Israel team, Mike Waltz, and they're just all so pro-Israel. And the Jewish leftists and liberals and Reform Jewish leaders and Reform rabbis are now fighting as Mike Huckabee. And it's kind of paradoxical and ironic that, thank God, we have Christians in this country who support Israel so strongly, like Huckabee, and thank God everyone from Trump on down, they know exactly what to make of Reform Jews and Jewish liberals and Jewish leftists, know exactly what to make of them. So when they go and demonstrate and say, not in our name, Jewish voice of peace, they know exactly who they're dealing with. Thank God.
This morning, we are learning that Columbia University is restricting access to its Morningside Heights campus ahead of expected protests. And this comes as the Trump administration cracks down on what it calls agitators in campus protests. And now we're hearing from an activist who was detained by federal authorities for protests at Columbia. Eyewitness News reporter Reagan Medji is live in Morningside Heights with more. Reagan.
Yeah, and you see behind me that the campus is already set up. What's going to happen is that the alumni, guests, and students will have to enter that enclosed area. That is where they'll have to check in, show that they do belong on campus. This is just a protocol for the potential of protests and also protocol for the possibility of ICE visits today at university, at the Columbia University campus. So this all on the heels over the weekend, federal immigration officials arresting Mahmoud Khalil, a Palestinian activist who played a role in Columbia University's pro-Palestinian protests last year. Khalil's attorney says the Columbia University graduate was detained while returning to his apartment and is being held at an ICE detention center. His attorney says ICE agents said they plan to revoke his student visa, even though Khalil is in the U.S. as a resident with a green card. Now, the Trump administration, if you remember, had announced on Friday that it was cutting $400 million in grants and contracts for Columbia University because of what it says were failures to fight antisemitism on campus. Now, Marco Rubio posting on X, quote, "We will be revoking the visas and or green cards of Hamas supporters in America so they can be deported." The New York Immigration Coalition is reacting.
ICE agents or Department of Homeland Security, they actually can't revoke anyone's green card. You have to go through a court process.
Now, limited access to students, to guests, to alumni, not only happening here at Columbia University, also happening at Barnard College, because there is also a concern for protests later on this afternoon. We're live here outside of Columbia University in Morningside Heights. Reagan Medji, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
As of now, there are no assurances.
A U.S. judge on Monday ordered that Palestinian student Mahmoud Khalil not be deported for now. Khalil had been a prominent figure in Columbia University's pro-Palestinian student protest movement.
Several things. Number one, the judge is a Jew, conservative, member of a conservative temple. Went to Camp Ramah in the summer, and all that goes with that. Number two, the way they reported, very important, the word temporarily. His current ruling, which is not totally unfair, I could see handing down such a ruling permanently. Personally, if I were that judge, personally, I'd like to kick the guy out. But under the law, I could see the legitimacy of a judge ruling that I just got the papers. This is a little bit new, throwing out a guy with a green card versus just a visa. I need a little bit of time to get a better handle on the actual law. Whether we can throw out a guy with a green card and he's married to an American citizen and they're having a baby. So I'm going to temporarily block deporting him for a week or so and let me learn the law, read the briefings. That's not an unfair thing. Notably, this judge, like every single judge whom you read about who reverses a Trump administration action, is an Obama judge or a Biden judge, and occasionally a Clinton judge. When you take any judge, when they issue something that goes against the liberal side, they emphasize the judge was named by Trump or the judge is named by Bush. Whenever an Obama judge or a Clinton judge or an Obama or a Biden judge hands down a left-wing ruling, the news report never tells you who appointed that judge. So I copy and paste the name into Google, and immediately I get the Wikipedia page on that judge. And every Wikipedia page on every federal judge has, as like the third section, something called Federal Judicial Service. And in that paragraph, they tell you who appointed him or her. Invariably, what happens is the anti-Trump people run to court. There are 100 more cases on every imaginable thing waiting. They go specifically to the courtrooms of Obama judges and Biden judges, and those judges temporarily hand down rulings stopping everything. And they are constantly pegs and in the wheel, and they slow everything down. And then you need to appeal. And depending on the circuit, there are like 11 circuits. And depending on the circuit, normally they go into an Obama judge in a left-wing circuit, such as the Ninth Circuit, such as I think it's the Second Circuit. And the odds are they'll get a left-wing appellate panel. By contrast, the right-wing, the really solid ones are like the Fifth Circuit. And then what goes on is after the appellate court, then you go to the Supreme Court. And that's where the Trump side has a slight majority right now. But what it does is Trump, and this is part of why Trump came in like gangbusters, because he acted at a more reasonable pace in his first term and did not appreciate how they could completely jam up the works by getting an Obama judge and then everything I just described. And by the time it finally gets to the Supreme Court, his 4 years are up. So this time he came in on day one with 100 and more executive orders ready, understanding it's all going to get jammed up for a year, but he'll have 3 more years to see everything done. That's what's going on.
Last year, just hours after telling Reuters that he was concerned the government was targeting him, Khalil was arrested Saturday night by U.S. Department of Homeland Security agents in front of his wife, a U.S. citizen who is 8 months pregnant, according to one of his lawyers. His arrest comes amid a crackdown on some of the student protesters by U.S. President Donald Trump, who branded Khalil a, quote, radical foreign pro-Hamas student on social media and said more arrests would follow. After his arrest, Khalil was moved to a federal jail for migrants in Louisiana to await deportation proceedings, according to his lawyers and a U.S. detainee database. New York Southern District Court judge...
Catch that also. They, instead of holding him in New York where he was arrested or New Jersey, they brought him to a holding pen in Louisiana. First of all, that adds pressure, and it's nasty. It is nasty. Where I'm coming from personally, good. But it is a subtle, nasty thing getting him out of New York, New Jersey. His wife cannot see him. Demonstrators at Columbia Barnard cannot hold demonstrations where he's being held because it's all the way in Louisiana. That's where Senator John Kennedy is, and you know about him. And it also increases the chance that maybe they can do the appeal in, I think it's the Fifth Circuit in Louisiana, which is a right-wing circuit. Get him out of New York and New Jersey.
Jesse Furman has ordered a hearing in the case for Wednesday. Khalil's lawyers also urged Furman to order their client's return to New York. They accused...
Notice the subtle message, how they throw in the Statue of Liberty. What does that represent? That we welcome people into our country. It's all very subtle.
Accused the government of seeking to deprive Khalil of access to legal counsel by sending him far from the state. On Monday, demonstrators on the streets of New York City denounced his arrest as an attack on protected speech. According to a Reuters witness, police and hundreds of protesters briefly clashed in Lower Manhattan, and at least one person was detained.
You're here because of permanent residence?
Khalil has been accused of or charged with a crime. However, Trump wrote that his presence in the U.S. was, quote, contrary to national and foreign policy interests.
Now, also developing at noon, this is just days after ICE agents arrested pro-Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia University. Federal agents now returning to the school to search 2 student dorm rooms. Fox 5's Linda Schmidt is here with more on this one. Linda, so many eyes on this as right now as it's developing.
Well, absolutely. And as you can imagine, we have seen the outrage on the campus by some. That is continuing today. And who knows, it might even continue to grow. Again, this is not by everybody on campus, but some. Now, first of all, the federal agents with Homeland Security, they showed up last night to search the rooms of 2 students on the very same day. The university announced that multiple students have been expelled and others suspended who seized a campus building last spring. Columbia University's president sent a lengthy campus-wide email last night, in part saying, quote, I am writing heartbroken to inform you that we had federal agents from the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, in 2 university residences. No one was arrested or detained. No items were removed and no further action was taken.
Heartbroken? She's the president of the university. She's informing the students. Heartbroken? This touchy-feely microaggression garbage. She's heartbroken? The president, that's why they have this mess going on to begin with. And I think she's also heartbroken that they just took $400 million away, and wait till they take more. I don't have it for you because of time, but the Department of Education submitted to Columbia a formal demand that Columbia implement 9 specific steps in the next week, or there will be a further consideration of withholding more money. And there is no way Columbia will be able to implement all those things in the next week. Just an example, though they're all very reasonable but tough. One example, the United States Department of Education is demanding that Columbia ban all masks on campus. And to the degree that a student says, my religion or my health, COVID, requires that I wear a mask, that is an exemption, a waiver. The Department of Education says if they show proof that the religion or health requires a mask, they may wear a mask, but then they must wear, so that it's externally seeable, identification of their name and their identification data, so they can easily be identified by law enforcement if they do something wrong. That's one of the things. They really figured out a really good list, and there's more to come. I think what they're doing right now is they're deciding strategically, let's do it only at Columbia. Let's go through all of this stuff. Let's see what kind of pushback we get, what kind of law, what kind of ACLU, which courts, what claims, and then let's go after all of them. That's what I think is going to happen. So they have time because they started in the beginning instead of waiting till the end. And this time they came in with guns blazing right away. God bless them. Okay, continue.
He goes on to say federal agents from the DHS served Columbia University with 2 judicial search warrants signed by a federal magistrate judge authorizing DHS to enter non-public areas of the university and conduct searches of 2 student rooms. The university is obligated to comply with the law. Now, she also said,
I'm sure many of you have gone to college. It's unbelievable to think of federal agents going into dorm rooms, and in light of what's going on, God bless them. It helps students wake up to the real world also. Last April, they didn't understand what the real world is. They thought they control the world. There they are with their tents, and they're dictating to the world. It's very healthy for them to see federal agents or read about federal agents coming in their dorms. Poor kids, they might even have to find a new place for their drugs.
says campus security was present there at all times. All of this follows the university's announcement yesterday that some students who stormed Hamilton Hall, you might remember this scene, on campus last spring, took it over, damaged the building, and barricaded themselves inside, have either been expelled or suspended. The situation was...
Got that? Happened in April. Now it's 9 months later, no, 11 months later. Now it's 11 months later, April 2024 to March 2025. 11 months later, what happened in 11 months? Last week, they lost $400 million. Suddenly they found conscience and they're expelling people from 11 months ago.
So bad at that time, the university requested help from the NYPD. And again, you might remember the scene. Hundreds of officers entering Hamilton Hall and arresting dozens of people. Now, in the meantime, the Trump administration has canceled $400 million in government grants and contracts to Columbia and is demanding the student start punishing students if the university wants that money restored. And we're going to take another live look right now, live pictures right now of Columbia, where yet another protest is planned today. This one scheduled to begin in about 25 minutes from now at 12:30. And of course, we do have a crew on the scene, and we will continue.
Columbia University says it expelled some students who took part in last year's Hamilton Hall protest. They also revoked some graduate degrees. John Levine with me this morning. Now, this happened last spring. Right. What took the school so long to act?
Well, I think it has something to do with the $400 million in grants that were just revoked. And I think, you're finally seeing Columbia treat Jewish students in the same way that they would have treated Black or Asian or Latino or gay students if something similar were happening. You and I were here last year or 18 months ago, and we heard these chants, death to America, death to Jews. If that had been any other group, Columbia would have taken swift and immediate action. Right. And it was only with Jews that suddenly, we have to discuss the free speech implications. I remember 5 years ago, if you misused a pronoun at these universities, they'd have your head on a spike. But when it's death to America, death to Jews, all of a sudden it's, there are free speech implications. Give me a break. Justice is being served. Couldn't be happier.
Well said. I'm with you all the way on this. Right now, President Trump's meeting with Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York State. Listen to what Trump had to say about the meeting. Roll tape.
Well, we're working on one project. It should be very easy. It's a pipeline going through a small section of New York. New York's held it up for years, actually, for years. And that, in fact, the governor's coming in, governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, who's a very nice woman. She's coming in tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to meet me on that and other things. Not only that, but other things. So I hope we don't have to use the extraordinary powers of the federal government to get it done. But if we have to, we will.
Yeah, he will. They're going to talk about congestion pricing in New York City. They're going to talk about this pipeline. I imagine that Governor Hochul's a little nervous.
Well, I'm going to use a topical expression. Trump doesn't have the cards right now. And I think that there's a reason the governor of New York is going into the Oval Office. It's because she definitely has leverage over this pipeline. And if she wanted to, she could gum up the works for years with lawsuits. And remember, this is a supermajority Democratic state. So I think they will talk about the pipeline. And I think she has an obligation to go and press congestion pricing, which is a major issue for her.
Thank you.
The controversy surrounding Columbia University's anti-Israel agitators has taken another dramatic turn, as the university has now started suspending and expelling students who took over campus buildings. Columbia Assistant Professor Shai Davidai joins us now with the details. Shai, what can you tell us about this move from the university?
First, we have to give credit where credit is due. For the past 17 months, I've been probably the most vocal opponent of this anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, and anti-American activity on campus. And I've been really outspoken about the university's inaction, the administration's inaction. And finally, they are putting their foot down. It shouldn't have taken $400 million of federal grants and threats from the government to do the right thing, but better late than never. At the same time, this is not a qualifier. At the same time, we have to remember what these students are being suspended and expelled for is their activity in April 2024. It took the university almost 10 months to bring these students to justice. And if the university had acted faster and more determined back then, we wouldn't have been in this situation. We could have avoided things like the 2 violent takeovers at Barnard College, which hospitalized a university staff member. We could have avoided the taking over of a Israeli professor's class that was targeted for being Israeli, right? That they disrupted him. So there's many things we could have avoided. Credit where credit is due. I hope that now this is the turning point where the university stops putting out empty statements and starts taking concrete actions.
Well, let's talk about the international news coming out of Colombia the past week or so. It's been the potential deportation.
And we've covered that, so for time, we'll move forward.
People, we're fighting for the same cause, so thank you, everyone.
This week, a bunch of anti-Semites also gathered in light of the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil. The 100 people went into Trump Tower in Manhattan, obviously because it's part of the Trump fiscal empire, to hold a big thing. Now, the people with the red shirts who organized this is a group that is called Jews for something, Jews for Palestine, Jewish Voice for Peace. You won't hear it from anyone else. Anyone else. I say majority, 90% or more of Jews for Peace are people who are not Jewish. I'm not saying that I, Rabbi Fischer, am withdrawing their Judaism. I'm saying they're not Jewish to begin with. All because you put on a communist red shirt and call yourself Jew for Peace does not mean you're Jewish. You have to be the descendant of a Jewish mother or converted according to halakha. Majority of them, I say, if you ask and you look, they're not Jewish to begin with, or they're the descendants of Reform conversions, or of women who didn't even do a Reform conversion, but married a Jewish man, and Reform calls them Jewish. And this is a wonderful halachic insight into the brilliance and wisdom of the Talmud and the rabbis from the beginning of Chazal. They understood if a person's mother is not Jewish, the child will come out, in terms of Judaism, perverted and corrupted, and not properly Jewish, because a mother transmits religion. Father transmits the practicality of the tribe. And when you're the child of Marilyn Monroe, and you have a Reform rabbi who called you Jewish, well, if she had children, those children would not necessarily have come out as Gedolei Yisrael, as Torah scholars. And so here you have a bunch, Jews do not, whatever, never again for anyone. No, never again is for Jews. And I just want to emphasize it because I had about 4 reports I was going to show you, but time does not allow all. And they all talk about how this is organized by Jews and their slogan, not in our name. Well, as a real Jew, I would say about them, on your behalf as well, not in our name.
About 11:30 this morning, 2 groups splintered. About 150 protesters in civilian clothes came in the front entrance of Trump Tower and the atrium on 56th Street. Again, this is a public access area.
Please bear with me. There's no reason for me to give you his 3-minute speech. I'll only do 1 minute, but I love to hear a Brooklyn accent whenever I can get one.
Within 10 minutes, a footprint of police officers, intelligence division detectives, notified of the situation. We got here about 12:20. We started making arrests in the bottom of Trump Plaza in the cafeteria area.
60 colleges and universities, including every UC school, now under investigation from the Department of Education over their handling of anti-Semitism on their campuses. The Trump administration threatening to pull federal funding.
Any institution is going to be in serious trouble if the administration decides to go through with these threats.
The letter sent today follows a similar investigation from the Justice Department into the University of California, and also after hundreds of millions of dollars in cuts to Columbia University. Good evening. I'm Claudine Wong.
And I'm Mike Meback. The investigation into the University of California and other colleges comes after a year of protests on a number of different campuses. KTVU's Zach Saw spoke to students at Cal tonight. He joins us live with the very latest. Zach?
Yeah, and tonight some of those students certainly worried that those investigations could lead to federal funding cuts here at Berkeley. Last week, as you mentioned, Columbia University, the first to be hit by such cuts. So students here worried, while others feel those cuts would be warranted.
My first reaction was finally. Why did it take so long?
A member of the UC Berkeley Hillel on the news that her college, along with 59 others, are now being investigated by the Department of Justice over, quote, anti-Semitic discrimination and harassment stemming from protests over the Israel-Hamas war.
You know, I believe in free speech. This is the United States. It's one of our greatest assets as a country. But there has to be a line when this free speech is literally leading to the normalization of anti-Semitism.
In a statement, the university saying in part, quote, we are confident we have the right processes in place now to respond to any anti-Semitic incidents. On the East Coast, Columbia University among the colleges now being investigated. Friday, the Trump administration taking the additional step of pulling $400 million from the university, canceling grants and contracts, blaming the Ivy League school for failing to squelch anti-Semitism on campus.
Pulling funding at this point is the only real way, unfortunately.
But other Berkeley students concerned that their university could be next.
Of course, it's not great when funding is pulled.
To others fearing retaliation over their views, asking for their faces not to appear on camera.
It's definitely very concerning. Going forward, I am a little worried about how my education will be impacted by this and what changes the funding will have on my classes.
Morgan Polikoff is a professor of education at the University of Southern California. Among the 60 schools now being investigated, he says the cuts would likely impact things like hiring, course availability, and the ability of universities to act as independent bodies.
It could impact the ability of educators to teach the way they want to teach. It could impact the offerings that are provided on college campuses. It could impact the kinds of research that gets done. It could impact the kinds of behaviors on college campus that are tolerated in terms of student free speech. And there's no question that these kind of devastating cuts will really have a serious long-term negative impact on the state of American higher education.
Or positive impact. Depends on how you look at it. I taught for 20 years at Loyola Law School in Los Angeles, and it was very clear I'm not allowed to say certain things in the classroom. I taught civil procedure and torts, advanced torts. In the year 2020, I published an article in the American Spectator where I'm a senior editor on Kamala Harris. When she was running in the primaries, that's the ones where Biden ended up winning those primaries. And I wrote very strongly, and Rush Limbaugh got a hand on my article, and he read the entire article over half an hour on his radio show. And the article, you can imagine, you all have been subjected to aspects of the way I express myself. So the article was extremely controversial, but it was publishable by a senior editor, and it was more controversial. And Media Matters, which monitors anything left, right of center, published it, getting it more circulation. And I was put under review by the administration at Loyola. I was put under review. My class was suspended while I was being reviewed. It was 2020. And for an article that I published about Kamala Harris that had nothing to do with Loyola or anything to do with anything I teach, just my private opinions made public outside the campus, in an off-campus which no one reads at Loyola. They just happened to be two Jewish leftists on faculty who saw the article described in Media Matters. Since Ellen Zichrona Livracha had just passed away about 3 weeks earlier, I decided to heck with it. I've been teaching there 20 years. I don't need it anymore. I'm dying of lung disease, and I can't really, it was the middle of 2020 COVID. I really can't go into a classroom anyway. So I just took the opportunity I didn't resign, I retired. That allowed me to start building up the shul, YouTube, Zoom. But all these people talking about First Amendment, as a professor of 20 years who won awards, student awards, that were conferred on me by the administration as the best professor, adjunct professor, and as somebody who's privately a friend of other secret conservative Marano professors at Loyola. All these people who talk about First Amendment, when it came to the other side, we weren't allowed to speak. Just try to go into now it's getting a little change that Trump is in, but go ahead 5 years ago and try to say something left of center as a faculty member, you go under review right away. So no sympathy in these quarters. For me personally, it worked out very well. I'm still alive. If I had to go into class with 50 people in a classroom during the COVID outbreak, who knows what would have happened to me? And between you and me and everybody, I wasn't able with my lungs to do my 4 hours of lecturing on Wednesday nights. But I've been through that experience. Everybody's worried about free speech.
Several Southern California universities are being warned by the Department of Education, the Trump administration, to do more to protect Jewish students. Letters were sent to 60 colleges nationwide Monday, including USC, Pomona College, Santa Monica College, and Chapman University. The letters cited Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits any institution receiving federal funds from discrimination and guarantees uninterrupted access to campus facilities and educational opportunities. The DOJ began visiting universities following pro-Palestinian demonstrations across the country last spring. One of the most disruptive, USC, lasted for 11 days. The LAPD arrested 93 people the first night alone. Many Jewish students reported being blocked from accessing parts of the campus.
UCLA, not one of those schools, but there was still a demonstration today on campus. Students walking out with a message to the Trump administration.
Fox 7's Christy Fajardo live at UCLA in Westwood with more on what happened there. Christy.
Notice on the film how many of them are Arabs. If you did not have foreign Arab students at these campuses, this past April never would have happened. I published about it. I've talked about it. You get those Arabs, or if they're allowed to be here, they're allowed to be here. But if without those Arabs, you'd never have these demonstrations. Never would have had the violence. Look at all the masks, all the keffiyehs.
Yeah, Alex and Christine, as you said, UCLA did not receive one of those letters from the Trump administration, but has been told that the Department of Justice is investigating some incidents here last year. And today, about 200 protesters gathered and accused the university of bending to pro-Israel groups and also to the Trump administration.
Notice how many keffiyehs and hijabs, or whatever they're called. And then they wear masks. This kid could be identified anyway. But these masks, if they would have to wear a big thing that said their name, there's no...
A new initiative to try to stop anti-Semitism on campus. It comes after war protests there last year.
NBC4's Michelle Valles is live in Westwood. So, Michelle, you have some more details about these recommendations.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but also this is a new move by the Trump administration cracking down on universities. At stake is a threat to withdraw funding. We saw that at Columbia, where they already canceled $400 million in funds there, federal funding, accusing the university of ignoring anti-Semitism.
How could any Jew have voted the other way in the past election? We had 4 years under Biden and under Harris and under Tony Blinken. I mean, how could any Jew with a Jewish sense of Jewishness have voted? Look what's changed in just under 2 months with a new administration that was determined to fight anti-Semitism finally. How could any Jew?
allegations. So that brings us here to UCLA, where it's going to feel and look different as the chancellor rolls out a new task force. This after last year's ensuing conflict in Gaza led to campus protests, encampments, violence, vandalism, arrests, remote learning, and canceled events and calls for change. So colleges have been under fire for not doing enough to protect students. The task force to combat anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli bias recommendations include training and education, improving the complaint system, assuring enforcement of current and new laws and policies. Also an action group made up of civic leaders from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and perspectives that will report back to the chancellor here at UCLA. This also comes at a time when the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights sent out letters to 60 universities that include USC and Pomona College, where protests erupted on campus last year. Also making that list, as you see here on your screen, Chapman University and Santa Monica College. In these letters, warnings of potential enforcement actions if these institutions do not fulfill their obligations under Title VI of the NLA.
The president had a meeting on March 12 in advance of St. Patrick's Day with the president of, or whatever, of Ireland. He's not, no, Higgins is the president, so he's whatever is Michael Martin. But in the Oval Office, a lot more friendly than his recent meeting with Zelensky. And whenever he has one of these meetings, the media come in and they ask questions. And they were asking questions about Zelensky and the usual stuff.
Well, we are planning to lower taxes, yeah, if the Democrats behave, but the Democrats have no clue. You saw that the other night during the speech. 2 young women were slaughtered by illegal aliens. 1 young man has very serious cancer. And
moment you probably can see from it, you'll see in a moment why this 2-minute clip has a fascinating Jewish aspect.
Many other problems. When you look at the people up there, they all had difficulty, very serious difficulty. But when we're talking about 2 young girls, beautiful young girls, Lake and Riley, and, you know the whole story. That evening was a disaster for the Democrats, in my opinion. And I would mention, and I'd see 2 mothers that were inconsolable as they stood, crying. Their daughters have been absolutely just destroyed, killed, viciously killed. And the young man who loves the police departments, he had cancer and has cancer, very bad cancer. There wasn't from people sitting there, Democrats, there wasn't a hand clap. Nobody stood. They were just stone-faced. These people are sick. There's something wrong with them. There was no standing for anybody. The only thing they liked is when they heard about the death taking place with Ukraine. They were happy about that. They were happy about that. Pocahontas was very happy. She's the one that was slapped. That's why I looked at her. I said, oh, it's Pocahontas. These people are sick. They don't know what's happening in the real world. The Democrats have to get their act together. And if they don't vote, then what you're going to do is you're going to have taxes that are going to go through the roof. You're going to have a very bad time. You're going to have some very bad things happen. And people are going to blame the Democrats. And Schumer is a Palestinian, as far as I'm concerned. He's become a Palestinian. He used to be Jewish. He's not Jewish anymore. He's a Palestinian.
And I got to say, I mean, that's one of the, what are you going to do? And to me, what was fascinating about that, which came out of left field, actually right field, Arabs were offended by that. CARE came out. They were offended. Like, it's sort of, we're Arabs. We're offended. Who do you think you're calling a Palestinian? And so it just seems to come out of that guy's mouth. And every so often, it's true. It's true. The guy's not Jewish anymore. But he's technically Jewish. Unlike the ones earlier who I said they're not even Jewish. In the case of Schumer, he is technically Jewish. You know he's Jewish because he always tells you, and he grills cheeseburgers.
What do you make of senators like Chuck Schumer, who are Jewish and writing a book on anti-Semitism, but yet killed a bill relating to it?
Well, Schumer's been terrible. Shomer Yisrael. If we have a Shomer Yisrael like Schumer, we're in real trouble. He's an opportunist. He's a politician. I've never liked Schumer for some reason. I remember him when he was a student. He's always been an.
He was your student?
I don't remember whether he was in my class or not, but I do remember him when he was a young man. I remember him when he ran for Congress. I remember him when he ran for senator. And, he's always been a self-serving, somewhat hypocritical person who wants to be everything to everybody. The way he handled the Iran deal was one of the most despicable things I've ever seen. He basically went to Biden and said, look, if you need me to vote against Israel, I will. But if you don't need me, hey, give me a free pass. Let me vote the right way. And the president didn't need him, gave him a pass. So he then bragged about voting against the Iran deal. He was prepared to vote for the Iran deal if the president told him to do that. So I'm not a Chuck Schumer fan. I'd love to see somebody run against him, but I don't think that's in the cards. And he talks to himself as the highest elected Jewish official in American history. We could do better.
Overall, I think the verdict is still out, but from what I've read, statistically, more Jews voted for Donald Trump than usually vote for Republican in an election, even though some say, no, it's, Kamala Harris still had the majority of the Jewish vote. How do you see it? I think, are we changing? Are we becoming more willing to vote for a Republican? I'm not talking about the Orthodox, I'm talking about the general Jewish population.
We're not changing. They're changing. They're changing. It's Ronald Reagan. He didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left him. It's happening in England. We're seeing British Jews leaving the left-wing parties and joining the Conservative Party. It's happening in Canada. It's happening in Australia. And of course, it's happening in the United States. It's gradual in the United States. But I think more American Jews today are voting against the Democrats. I'm not saying they're voting for the Republicans. They're voting against the Democrats. How could any Jew vote for AOC? How can any Jew vote for Ilhan Omar? How could any Jew vote for a Jew like Bernie Sanders, a self-hating Jew? How can any Jew vote for my former colleague, Liz Warren? These are Israel haters. And you hate Israel, we're not voting for you. And I think a lot of Jews send that message.
It sounds like you should include Senator Chuck Schumer in that category.
I do. I don't think I would vote for him. I don't vote in New York. But if I were voting in New York, I don't think I would vote for Chuck Schumer. I don't think he has served the interests either of New York or of America or of the Jewish community. He is not somebody that would ever get my support.
Thank you.
Okay, I have to get to work now. The United Nations Human Rights Council, vicious anti-Semitism. It's made up, the Human Rights Council is made up of countries like Cuba, Iran, the most vicious Nazi-like, not only anti-Jewish, but just countries that commit genocide against their own people. That's the Human Rights Council. In his first term, Trump finally pulled America out. Biden, on his first day in, issued an executive order putting us back in. And his first to back in, Trump, the second time around, pulled us out again. They're vicious. It's like a Nazi party agency. The things they come out with are Nazi quality under the aegis of the United Nations. They just came out this past week. Every week, it's all in 1 week. This past week, they came out with a formal report after a year or so of investigation and research and study, accusing Israel of war crimes, genocide, and mass rape. Everything that the Arabs did to Israel in the past 15 months, since October 7, they just changed the nouns, just turned it around. That Israel did all those things. Duach HaShkarim, this report of lies, Hazui Shel Ha'um, the United Nations report of lies against Israel. This is the Mo'etzet Zchuyot Adam, the Human Rights Council of the of Umot Meuchadot, the United Nations.
מועצת זכויות האדם של האו"ם, גוף ממנו פרשה ישראל שוב לפני כחודש, אבל המתקפה שיצאה ממנו היום...
Okay, the report that came out today, namely earlier in the week, seems to be straight out of their usual package of lies. There's the United Nations Security Council, an extraordinary anti-Semite, and that's really saying something when you consider all the Jew haters all around them.
נראתה כמו לקוחה מילקוט הכזבים.
Our report finds that Israel has increasingly employed sexual, reproductive and other forms of gender-based violence.
It's simply not true. I mean, it doesn't even require, in a group like ours, to even elaborate. Pure lies.
Against Palestinians as part of a broader effort to undermine their right to self-determination. It also...
So you see where they're coming from. This is Khan 11, the public broadcaster of Israel.
So concludes that Israel has carried out genocidal acts through the systematic destruction of sexual and reproductive healthcare facilities.
הוועדה הבינלאומית העצמאית לחקר...
Translation: Hamas hides in hospitals. Hamas runs the hospitals. Israel, to go and capture them, went into the hospitals and captured them. They built tunnels under the hospitals for headquarters of Hamas, and Israel, after clearing out the hospitals, bombed the hospitals to get under the hospitals to bomb the tunnels. That's what they call Israel attacking the sexual reproductive rights of the so-called Palestinians.
השטחים הכבושים כהגדרתם מאשימה את ישראל בביצוע רצח עם בעם הפלסטיני ובמעשה אלימות מינית כנגד פלסטינים, ואולם ראיות לכך לא הציגה.
The frequency, prevalence and severity of sexual and gender-based crimes perpetrated across the occupied Palestinian territory.
I mean, listen to the discussion. You see where he's coming from. But I just wanted to bring to your attention this past week that the UN issued that formal report accusing Israel of genocide, and they did it on International Women's Day to highlight that Israel is a great enemy of women and stuff like that. Really, I mean, what can you say? What can you say? It's always been that way. Imagine living in the 1940s where you look for a country to stand up to Hitler and you see one country after another either saying the same things about Jews, Italy and all the countries that were part of that alliance, or remaining silent.
So unfortunately, I'm going to have to now arrest you on suspicion.
Okay, catch this. Talking about our United Nations and the International Criminal Court. This one is telling you, come on Sunday morning, you never know what's going to pop up. This lovely woman is a judge on the International Court of Justice. She comes out of either Ethiopia or somewhere. She's their representative on the court. And she was being arrested this past week for committing slavery. She somehow seems to have allegedly gotten her hands on some woman who is her housekeeper and doesn't get paid and may not leave the house. And she's a judge and she claims diplomatic immunity. That means if you're in a certain country like the United States and you're registered as a protected foreign diplomat or foreign judge, whatever, it's illegal to arrest you. You're given a special immunity. This very famous case of some Arab from like Saudi Arabia or one of those places who had killed somebody, and he claimed that they can't arrest him because he's entitled to diplomatic immunity. So here she's being interviewed. You're going to be arrested. You can't arrest me. On what grounds? On grounds of slavery.
Of keeping somebody in slavery and servitude under the Modern Slavery Act. So you don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which later on in court.
Officer.
Anything you do say may be used as evidence. All right. Sorry?
I am a judge in my country. I even have immunity. I am not a criminal.
You've got immunity in this country?
Yes. I have a diplomatic passport.
You're a diplomat?
Yes.
So we'll need to see that then.
Yes.
And then we'll need to speak to the embassy if you are a diplomat.
I came here as a student. I don't need To work for me. I didn't come with her. She asked me because she has worked at my home before. She asked me.
So unfortunately, I'm going to have to now arrest you on suspicion of keeping somebody in slavery and servitude under the Modern Slavery Act. So you don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned, something which later on in court.
Officer.
Anything you do say may be used as evidence. All right. Sorry?
I am a judge in my country. I even have immunity. I am not a criminal.
You've got immunity in this country?
Yes. I have a diplomatic passport.
Okay, we heard this, so tell it to the judge. Ribbon Shalom.
Again, the BBC under fire over the past week. This Gaza documentary, which is an absolute and utter crock of nonsense. They paid 400,000 quid. Some of it made its way to Hamas. It would appear an open letter has now been sent by over 200 entertainment industry figures, including Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne, saying basically, what is the BBC going to do about this? They need a full investigation about this anti-Israel bias that can...
So there we go. We have Ozzy Osbourne on our side. Okay, even Black Sabbath is a good Shabbos. Okay, Ozzy Osbourne's on our side. Sharon Osbourne, just if you're wondering, where does Ozzy Osbourne come in?
Again, the BBC under fire.
Like, when's the last time he was coherent? And Sharon Osbourne is Jewish and proud of it. So that's the answer on that one. And it wouldn't be Rabbi Fischer Sunday if some Arabs in Germany were doing something. Okay, enough of that. Simcha, everybody celebrates Purim in their own way. We go forward.
This is Hodaya Haroush. She is a police investigator in southern Israel. And this is Sigal, a patrol officer in Jerusalem. They're both part of a small but growing group of Haredi Jewish women changing what's possible in law enforcement and their religious communities.
My name is India, and you are about to get an inside look into the lives of Israel's female Haredi police.
First, who are the Haredi Jews? The word Haredi translates to those who tremble, referring to their deep reverence for God. Haredi Jews follow a strict interpretation of Jewish law, with every part of their life influenced by faith. Haredi Jews, for now, are a minority in Israel and make up around 13% of Israel's population. For Haredi women, family life is one of their top priorities. The average Haredi family has around 7 children.
By the way, Haredim are 13% of Israel. Blacks are about 12% of the United States. So the Haredim are as important a population group in Israel as blacks are in the United States.
Their religious community also adheres to modesty laws, known as tzniut in Hebrew. For example, under these laws, married women cover their hair with a head covering or a wig worn for modesty. It is also forbidden for men and women to touch unless they are married or an immediate family member. The bottom line is that a Haredi woman taking on the role of a police officer is rare, especially in a community that is traditionally more private and separate from mainstream society.
היי, שלום, נעים מאוד. אני הודיה הרוש, אני אימא ל3 בנות, חוקרת בתחנת משטרת נתיבות. אני ילידת אשדוד, נולדתי להורים שהגיעו מאיראן, קהילה יהודית פרסית.
From the outside, you may never expect what this young woman has been through, because her journey with the police began with devastating loss on October 7th.
בעלי היה שוטר בתחנת משטרת שדרות. בעלי היה ראש משמרת סיור. לקראת הבוקר התחילו להם האזעקות, והיה מטורף. אני לא ידעתי מזה בגלל שאני שומרת שבת. אליהו קיבל קריאה לכיוון זיקים, שהוא הורה לכולם לעלות על ציוד מלא, שזה ממש לצאת ללחימה.
While Eliyahu was at the Sderot police station, about 1 kilometer from the Gaza border, a group of terrorists drove by on a white truck.
הם קלטו קודם את חבר של אליהו בשם שרון, הם ירו לכיוונו. כשאליהו קלט את הסיטואציה, הוא ירה לכיוונם.
After Eliyahu shot at the Hamas terrorist, they fired back and killed him.
והוא הראשון בעצם שחתר למגע ונהרג בתחנה.
Before Eliyahu fell in battle, he submitted Hodaya's resume to join the police academy. She was accepted and decided to move forward with joining even after becoming a widow with 3 children at just 26 years old.
אליהו נפל שהוא היה בן 28, צעיר, היה לו מלא חלומות להגשים. והחלומות האלה לא יהיו, כי הוא הגן על המדינה.
Now that Hodaya is an investigator with the police, she spends her days dealing with cases among the Haredi community as a Haredi woman herself.
אני מאמינה בבורא עולם שהוא שם אותי כשליחה פה בתחנת משטרת נתיבות. השילוב ששילבו אותנו בו במשטרה זה דבר מצוין. כשמגיעה אליי נפגעת העבירה, קורבן, שהיא בעצם המגזר החרדי, היא מאוד מפחדת ומאוד חוששת לדבר. בציבור בדרך כלל לא מדברים על דברים כאלה כמו עבירות מין, שזה דבר שהוא מאוד קנאים לפרטיות בציבור. יש לנו דיבור משותף, שאין את זה לכלל החוקרים.
Today, Hodaya dedicates her work to honoring the memory of her late husband.
אנחנו חיים את זה יום יום. אני לא דמיינתי שאני אהיה כל כך צעירה, אלמנה, עם 3 בנות. לא דמיינתי את זה, בחלום הכי גרוע שלי לא דמיינתי את זה. ואם קיבלתי את זה, זה משהו שאני יכולה לעמוד בו, וזה ניסיון שאני מצליחה לעמוד בו, כן? קשה, לפעמים יש נפילות, אבל קמים הנפילות האלה.
Now we're headed to the country's capital and the city with the highest Haredi population in the world, Jerusalem. Now, imagine being a police officer in a religious community where modern institutions like law enforcement are sometimes viewed with skepticism. That is why Haredi police officers are often assigned specifically to patrol Haredi neighborhoods. They understand the unique culture and even know the unspoken rules that other non-religious officers may not.
נעים מאוד, אני סיגל. אני אימא ל5 ילדים, בת 49, משרתת במשטרת ישראל כ-25 שנה.
So, how does Sigal's family feel about her becoming a police officer?
מאוד תמכו בהורים שלי, המשפחה שלי, כולם בכלל. אנחנו משפחה מאוד ציונית. אבא שלי שירת במשטרת ישראל 30 שנה, וכל הזמן הוא רצה שאני אהיה שוטרת.
Historically, there's been tension between the Haredi community and the police. However, these women are serving as ambassadors.
באחת ההפגנות ניגש אליי ילד בסביבות גיל 12 או 13, שעשה שם בלגן שלם, התיישב על הכביש והתחיל להציס את כל החברים שלו. ואז ביקשתי ממנו שיזוז, גם הוא וגם החברים שלו שיעלו על המדרכה. הוא בהתחלה התחיל ככה להציק לי ולהגיד לי, מה, את שוטרת דתייה, אסור לך להיות בייחוד, ביחד עם עוד שוטר במשמרת או בניידת. ניגשתי אליו מיוזמתי ודיברתי איתו. הסברתי לו בעצם מה השליחות שלי ולמה אני כן יכולה לעבוד עם שוטר. והוא הבין את זה.
When it comes to maintaining her religious practices on the job, Sigal sets an example. While other female police officers wear pants as part of their uniform, female Haredi officers like Sigal wear long skirts to comply with modesty laws.
הארגון בכלל והפיקוד שלי בפרט יודע להעריך את האורח חיים הדתי שלי ויודע לאזן בין המשימה המבצעית לבין האורח חיים שלי בבית. אף פעם לא דרשו ממני להגיע בשבת, אני לא נפגעת בקטע הזה.
But it's also important to mention that Sigal's work isn't limited to her own community.
At the end of the day, who are you protecting?
יהודים, ערבים, נוצרים, כל מי שנמצא פה, כל מי שנמצא במדינת ישראל, מחובתי להגן עליו, ללא שום דופי, ללא שום הבדל. וזה בדיוק מה שאנחנו עושים.
With the Haredi being the fastest growing Jewish population in Israel, their representation in law enforcement is becoming increasingly vital. To address this, the police established a Haredi unit and are planning to expand it further. Meanwhile, Hodaya and Sigal are redefining what's possible for women in their community. They show that you can protect your faith while protecting others.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
You're welcome.
And as we wind down now for us today, this is also informative that Israel, they now have the first Haredi battalion, brigade. It's reported by their Can 11. It's a very big issue that the Haredis, in great measure, do not serve in the army. It's a whole long discussion for another time because of time limits. But in the mood, last week was a lot of negative stuff, unfortunately, in the news, and maybe because of Purim. This was a good week. People being expelled from Columbia, ICE invading their dormitories, people speaking out, even Ozzy Osbourne, and wanted for Purim in the good sense, not as a joke, but to see a side of the Haredim that we don't always see, where they do what they should do and participate in the defense of the neighborhoods and of the country.
לא להתחיל להתקדם עד שרואים שכולם עמדו. לעמוד מהר. יאללה. ליישר קו!
זאת התצאה הראשונה לחטיבה החרדית החדשה בצה"ל, החשמונאים.
נשק 60 מעלות. מערכת מתוכנית. זהו, התקלתם, קדימה לרצפה,
לפני כחודשיים התגייסו 70 צעירים חרדים לפלוגה הסדירה הראשונה.
כמעט כל החבר'ה כאן שילמו מחירים משפחתיים וחברתיים גדולים. העיפו חברים שלהם מהישיבה, כל החבר'ה שהיו בסביבה הקרובה שלהם. הורים ששמעו על זה שהילד שלהם מתגייס ממש בשבוע של הגיוס, ניתקו את הקשר איתו. עכשיו הוא צריך לחפש מקום מגורים. מחירים.
Really tragically that they get expelled from the kollel, from the yeshiva, for volunteering to the army, and parents tell them don't come back home. But it's a movement that's starting. It's going to take a while, but it's starting. October 7 did a lot of things to Israel, and it's shaken some of them up. Not enough, not yet, but it's forced people to confront a lot of things. For Haredim, it's forced a lot of them to confront that they also can get killed if they don't do something to participate in the defense. And for Israeli leftists and liberals, it's forced them to rethink the two-state solution. 80% in the last poll do not trust Arabs to have a country between the river and the sea. 80%. Knesset voted like 98%. There will never be an Arab country between the river and the sea. It doesn't get reported in America, but everybody's running around talking about Palestinian. There's nobody in Israel that's going to let that happen.
התחלה, היה לי מלא חששות. המשפחה, חברים וזה. איך יגיבו, מה יגיבו?
צילמנו אותך לפני ההתגיוס, לטשטש אותך וכזה, משפחה, ישיבה וכל הדברים האלה, והיום?
לא אכפת לי מה האנשים יגידו, לא אכפת לי מה האנשים ידברו. אני עשיתי את הצד שלי. היום אני חשמונאי גאה, אני גאה בבחירה שעשיתי. אני שמח שעשיתי את הבחירה הזאת. תוגו שעון, זמן הבא, אישור קו, איפה שהיינו, סגרים.
ופה קשה, חבר'ה. זה לא מחירים לבוא עכשיו לאיזה שבוע של נופש או איזה חודש של קמפינג. זה לבוא, לעבוד, המסירות נפש הכי גדולה.
נשק,
יש געגועים לישיבה?
יש געגועים לחברים של הישיבה? געגועים לישיבה? יש געגועים, אבל אני יודע שעשיתי את הצד הנכון.
החטיבה החדשה שקיבלה כשרות מהדרין היא הניסיון המשמעותי ביותר של צה"ל בעשרות השנים האחרונות לשילוב חרדים בצבא. הצטרפנו ליום אימונים בשטח עם הלוחמים החרדים.
מה אתה חופר?
5, 2.
מה אתה חופר?
מה שאני הולך לסחוב עכשיו.
היום אנחנו מתכוננים בעזרת השם לצאת במסע. שבוע עמוס, עשינו מלא. מגלה מה זה להיות לוחם, מה זה לזוז, מה זה להיכנס לרבק, לראות, לפול על הרצפה, לא משנה.
הסריטות. מקום שיהיה גופה. אפשר 40 שניות. קח את הגופה. יש פה כמה מקומות מבולבלים, במיוחד פה. היה פה פיגוע לא מזמן, אנשים שחושבים שהם התמקמו פה עוד הרבה זמן. זה המטרות הראשונות שלנו בעזרת השם. נראה לי, אני מקווה.
שובב אתה, אה?
שובב? למה שובב?
The reporter just said in Hebrew, so you're a Shababnik. And the other guy is saying, I'm not a Shabab. Those are Haredim who are a little bit off the Haredi path.
וכשאתה צריך לשבת וללמוד תורה, לפעמים אתה מסתכל על חבר'ה, אתה לא מבין איך זה קורה בכלל. חבר'ה שיושבים לך כאילו בחוקים של החיים, הרגע ישבו כולם בוץ, יושבים וזה. זה עולם אחר, אתה פתאום עולה למקומות אחרים. באמת, זה באמת, אני אומר, חבר'ה שלומדים בכזה מצב זה עולם אחר.
אוזנת! גרגע לישיבה, אה?
את האמת? כן. ברור, מה?
רואים את האדרנלין, את האטרף, מה שהולך פה. רואים, נכון? כן?
מי זה המכסה?
אני בחור חסידי, למדתי בישיבה חסידית. אין לי משפחה שהתגייסו, וזה היה לגמרי חדש לי. וגם חדש למשפחה שלי, אז מטורף לגמרי.
נפתלי!
לא יודע. אז אתה מגיע ואז פתאום, וואו. אוקיי, אני צריך להיות במצב 2, אני צריך להתארגן תוך 2 דקות להיות על מדים, ו4 דקות להיות על ציוד.
שום נהיה אלוף! כמובן האלוף! המחלקה תימתח להקשב! שב!
זה אנרגיה. כל בוקר צריך צוות צילום. יופי, חבר'ה, תהיו איתי.
מה הכי הפתיע אותך בצה"ל?
העבודת צוות. לאט לאט פתאום אתה קולט. וואו, אוקיי, שנייה. רק ככה נצליח בעצם. וזה מטורף. זה משהו שבחיים לא חוויתי ו...
יאללה, קוראים לך. יאללה. בוא, סקוייך.
אני המ"פ של הפלוגה הסדירה.
אתה ראש אישי ופה.
אפשר להגיד גם.
איך הבחורים החרדים?
נפלאים. יש להם מוטיבציה של סיירות. שאני אומר לך, ראיתי הרבה מסגרות צבאיות. הם לא נופלים משום מסגרת אחרת. רמת המוטיבציה, הם גם לא סופרים את רוב המסגרות. זהו, חלק הגיעו מוכנים, חלק פחות, אבל לאט לאט. מתקדמים איתם בדרגה, בלי לשבור אותם.
בוא, כן.
ברמת העיקרון אנחנו אבל כובשים שטח, לא?
נכון, כל אחד בקו ישר.
גם אם אין מחבל, אמרו לנו שיורים.
נכון. לא, זה באמיתי. כרגע אתה יורה רק על מטרה בטיחותית. בסדר, בגלל זה יש 4 מטרות.
גם ברטובים.
כן.
הכל! הכל! כולנו מלפנים!
בהגדרה שלך אתה הגייס של החרדים?
הגייס זה מילה שהמציאו המתנגדים לגיוס. אני המגייס של החטיבה.
3 מדלג!
6! אחראי על איתור של האנשים הפוטנציאליים המתאימים שלנו, להביא אותם משלב הלא יודע, המקום הזה מנותק ממנו, עד למקום שהוא מתגייס. מטרתנו היא בעצם להיות אלטרנטיבה טובה לבחור שהחליט שהישיבה והסדרים בישיבה הם לא מה שהוא מתכוון לעשות.
תמים באוזניים, משקפי מגן על העיניים!
תמים באוזניים, משקפי מגן על העיניים!
תן!
זאת הפעם הראשונה שהלוחמים החרדים מתאמנים באש חיה בשטח.
אחד, זורק ריבון! קדימה הסדר!
אלופים, תותחים, ברוך השם, חבר'ה נהדרים, זכינו.
איפה היית קודם?
קודם הצבא? כולל.
מנכ"ל 2, 3?
מה הביא אותך לפה?
עם ישראל.
להרים לכתפיים 2, 3. לאט.
למה החלטת שאתה מתגייס?
יש זמנים יש קול שקורא ברור וחזק. בשבילי זה היה ברור.
איך זה לך כל כך ברור ולכל כך רבים לא?
אני לא חושב שזה מה שמבדיל ביני לבין אחרים, זה לא שאני יותר פיקח. מי שנמצא יותר קרוב, שומע יותר חזק.
טוב חברים, בשעה טובה. נצא למסע.
הקמתם באח, הקמתם הכל, השקיעו פה עשרות מיליונים, בסוף הגיעו 70 חבר'ה.
אם מישהו חשב שמקימים חטיבה ביום אחד, חטיבה חרדית בכלל, אז הוא חשב לא טוב.
כמה אתה סמל המחלקת אם אתה להקשיב הקשב?
רוב האנשים שמגיעים אלינו עכשיו לגיוס השני, וזה אנשים, הרבה מהם הם אנשים שהבחורים פה בטירונות הראשונה, הם הביאו אותם. זאת אומרת, אמרו להם, חבר'ה, אנחנו נמצאים פה, אנחנו מבסוטים עד השמיים, תבואו.
היום אני שמח, אני יודע שהחטיבה נמצאת על דרך המלך, גם תורה וגם במלחמה. אני לא מנסה לשכנע אף אחד שנמצא ולומד בישיבה להגיע למקום הזה, אבל יש כל כך הרבה אנשים שמחפשים את עצמם.
כבר 70 שנה מנסים למצוא את הפתרון, איך מביאים חרדים לצבא, איך עושים את זה.
עושים את זה רק באהבה, רק באמון. רק בשיח, וכמובן שלא בכפייה. כל כפייה שמנסים היום לעשות, לא משנה מי עושה אותה, זה כמו להפיל את הוולד לפני סוף ההיריון. כל אחד שראיינתי כאן, שאלתי אותו למה באת לצבא. אז הם כמעט לא מבינים את השאלה שלי. ומה זאת אומרת, עם ישראל? אני רוצה להיות שותף, רוצה להיות חלק, להגן על העם שלי.
מקווה שכואב לכם וקשה לכם. בטוח שלא עשיתי מספיק טוב, לא מספיק קשה. תמיד יש יותר קשה. הרוח תקבע את הניצחון, הרוח. אנחנו שואפים למקום אחד, בית המקדש. לירושלים! הבנויה! לירושלים! הבנויה!
איך היה?
וואו, היה קשה. הרגעים שהייתי בטוח שזהו.
מה היה הכי קשה?
כשאתה רואה את הבסיס, מחזירים אותך. אתה רואה את המקום שישנת בו, מחזירים אותך. אתה כבר לא יודע, אתה אומר... כן, מה ש...
בסדר היום של החטיבה מקפידים על 3 תפילות ביום ושעת לימוד הכוללת חברותה כמו בישיבה.
יש פה חברות, יש פה באמת חבר'ה שבאמת על רמה. יש לך אחד בחור ישיבה ויש לך אחד שהוא חסיד.
צריך לרוץ לחטא.
ראש הישיבה שלך הוא נגד גיוס בחורי ישיבות?
כן.
או גיוס חרדים בכלל?
כן.
אם הוא היה מגיע לפה, מה היה אומר?
אני לא יודע. אבל אני בתור, סתם דוגמה, אם אני אגיד הייתי רב והייתי רואה את מה שהולך פה, זה משהו שבאמת מרים את הבן אדם ונותן לו משמעות אחרת לחיים. אתה באמת מאמין שאתה יכול יותר, זה באמת מה שנותנים לי פה.
האם החטיבה החדשה תעשה שינוי אמיתי ותביא עוד חרדים לצה"ל? זאת שאלה שרק בעוד שנים נדע את התשובה עליה. ועדיין, הפלוגה הראשונה והחלוצה היא בשורה.
אם כבר פורים ותחפושות, אז מה שקרה בימים האחרונים...
Our last clip before we close with another song. This short and sweet. A lady decided to go to Machaneh Yehuda, which is Israel's most famous outdoor fruit and vegetable market in Jerusalem, Machaneh Yehuda, and she went dressed with a bride's dress and a big sign saying, "I'm looking for a husband who is a Tzaddik and Funny, who is a righteous man with a good sense of humor. A comedian, someone make me laugh." And she ended up getting online. She got a big story in the media, and she got 40 wedding proposals afterwards in her email and WhatsApp and texting. And so if you know anyone who's trying and hasn't thought of any other ideas, that was a story. She decided she's getting dressed up for Purim and dressing like a bride and let it take over itself. Here we go.
בשוק מחנה יהודה בירושלים, כלה הלכה ברחוב וקיבלה את התגובות האלה. רגע, קודם נראה את הסרטון, ואז נגיד שלום לאליאור.
I'm looking for a mechapeshet, looking for chatan, a husband, tzaddik v'chaychan, righteous and funny. Tishlach li like, please send me, just as we always ask viewers and students to give us a like, give me a like or whatever. And she's there giving interviews to everybody.
כן, אליאור שריג, שלום לך.
שלום וברכה.
נו, מצאת חתן?
So, Elior, nice to see you. New? Did you find a husband in the market?
שוק?
תראה, שעתיים בשוק זה לא מספיק.
לא מספיק?
Look, it was only 2 hours in the market. It's not long enough.
שעתיים בשוק למצוא חתן?
לא, לא.
Talking about 2 hours in the shuk is not long enough to find a husband.
זה ממש לא מספיק.
הבנתי. טוב, מה...
No, there's just not enough time. Oh, okay, I understand. Well, so, what did you say?
נו, מה קרה? לבשת בגדי כלה, הלכת לשוק מחנה יהודה, מה רצית לומר?
רציתי להעלות את המודעות.
למה?
שעם ישראל צריך להתאמץ יותר, לחתן יותר נשים בעם ישראל.
Well, my goal was to get publicity. The people have to work harder to get married. People have to get married.
יותר גברים בעם ישראל. כי באמת, יש אנשים שדי, שהמצוקה מאוד גדולה, ולפעמים מקבלים הצעות שידוך פעם בחצי.
There are people out there who, well, once in a while they get a shidduch proposal, a suggestion of someone to marry, and they do it, they don't do it.
חצי שנה, פעם ב4 חודשים.
They go out on a date once in 6 months, once in 4 months.
פעם ב7 חודשים, וזה לא הגיוני. עכשיו קיבלתי אולי 40 הצעות שידוך.
זה...
And it doesn't make sense to me why they're not more active in their search. I mean, I spent 2 hours and I got 40 marriage proposals.
מה שרציתי לשאול אותך, אחרי שהלכתי עם השלט, מחפשת חתן, דרך אגב, מה היה כתוב? צדיק ו...
חייכן.
מחפשת חתן צדיק וחייכן, נחמד. זה כאילו, אז כאילו יש לך 40 הצעות מצדיקים וחייכנים?
So let me understand this. You got in 2 hours marriage proposals from 40 different people who are both righteous and humorous?
עכשיו?
עדיין לא עברתי על זה, לא הספקתי לעבור לטלפון, כאילו יש לי המון הודעות שלא עניתי עליהן.
את רואה?
Well, I haven't had a chance yet to get them all on the phone and find out how funny they are. But anyway...
אולי הבנות לא מתאמצות מספיק, אולי כל אחת צריכה לקחת שלט, ללכת להתחפש לקלה, ללכת למחנה יהודה, ולהגיד מהי בדיוק...
Maybe women are the ones not doing enough. Maybe all women should get dressed up in bridal gowns and go to Machaneh Yehuda.
רוצה, ואז מגיעות 40 הצעות.
תראה...
And everybody will get 40 proposals.
באמת, שמעתי את זה גם ממישהי מהרכבת, תקשיבי בדיוק, אני אמרתי את זה לחברות שלי, אתן צריכות ללכת ולצעוק ברחובות, כאילו, זה לא הגיוני מה שקורה פה.
תגידי, אבל מה ההיקף? זאת אומרת, מה ההיקף של מה שנקרא תופעת הרווקות המאוחרת?
מה ההיקף?
כן, נגיד.
תראה, זה סדר גודל מאוד גדול, אני מכירה המון חברות, וגם המון גברים יצא לי יכולה להכיר, בני 35, 45.
Well, she continues talking about it, had a good time, people had a good time, and I had to share these little slices of Israeli life. Baruch Hashem, we had a week with a lot of good news, so it was just a lot of good news. Even with the President of the United States calling Schumer a Palestinian. It was just like one of those Purim weeks, and I wanted to do that. And
מהדייטים של 40 אנשים, אנחנו נמשיך לעקוב, וגם נבוא לחגוג בחתונה בעזרת השם.
מעולה, תודה רבה.
Well, we'll stay in touch with you and keep up, and God willing, we'll be at the wedding when you have somebody.
יאללה, אליאור, להתראות בהצלחה.
And of course, he responds with the word Yalla. Yalla, Elior, Lehitraot, Bahatzlacha, standard Israeli words we all should know. Let's learn those words. Little Hebrew. Toda Rabah. Thank you very much. Yalla. All right, let's go. Lehitraot. See you next time. Bahatzlacha. With success. Okay. And as you know from the years, I like to introduce you to major songs that have an Israel or Judaic component, and that normally means playing it 2 or 3 weeks in a row till we get like a sense of the song, and I try to find different presentations so it's not predictably boring. These have millions upon millions of views on YouTube.